Welcome to the Broken Arrow Police Department's podcast, BAPD On Air. I'm Chief Lance Arnold, and we are honored today to have a very special guest, United States Senator James Lankford. Senator Lankford brings a unique perspective to our podcast today of public service, not only as a longtime advocate for Oklahomans, but also as a son of a small-town police officer. Senator Lankford has a deep respect for law enforcement, commitment to civility, and efforts to support officers through legislation like Back the Blue Act make him an especially meaningful guest for our community. Senator, thank you for being here today.
You bet. You're good to get a chance to visit with you and to be able to be here.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to just dive right into kind of have the opening, but you've spoken about your father's service as a police officer. And with that, how has that shaped your understanding of the challenges and the responsibilities of police officers and their families in society today?
Yeah, I would tell you most of the time when I get just a time to be able to visit with law enforcement behind the scenes, go to a station and just check in on guys and ladies and just be able to talk to them, almost always I'll bring up, hey, listen, before I'm done, before I leave out, I want to talk to you about your families. I want to talk to you about the stresses of it. My parents divorced when I was 4 years old. And so I look at it and I say, for the life and the family life of a cop, it's tough. The stresses that are there are different in those roles than they are in many other roles. And I have a good relationship with my dad, and we've stayed in contact all these years. But it's just a very tough role for families to be able to keep together and to be able to manage that I think most people in the public just don't understand. So I always tell law enforcement when I talk to them, watch out for your kids, watch out for your family, take care of them, understand they deal with different stresses. And very often for law enforcement, they decompress with other law enforcement because they know their family can't understand what it really is to be able to be in that vehicle and to be in that situation, but their family's desperately trying to pull in and to say, hey, make me a part of your life. And so that's always my encouragement to law enforcement, say, hey, I'm praying for you, want to encourage you with your family and check on them, let them into your world.
Absolutely. That's great. And it's great advice. I'll tell you, just in my 28 years of doing this, the progression that we've had in the profession to think more about wellness holistically, not just that physical wellness, the mental wellness, the spiritual wellness, and the financial wellness. All of those have been just become more of a powerful theme in our profession, and one that fortunately for our agency, we're able to really promote inside and make a big difference about that. But to your point, I've seen these statistics, and they, while there are a few different here and there, what they all tend to say is the average person might experience a handful of critical incidents in their life, and the average police officer will experience hundreds of critical incidents in the course of their career. Right?
It's just different. Yeah, my wife's been very engaged with different law enforcement groups that are trying to be able to do all the peer support and for ways to be able to help people process through those critical incidents. Because again, there is the adage to say, hey, I'm tough. This is what I do for a living. I got to just suck it up and deal with it. But you're also a human being and a person and a family, and you have neighbors, and you have all the same struggles and challenges everyone else does, and it just compounds it.
Well, I can speak for all of my peers and say that we really appreciate the recognition that you have for that. And speaking of that, you've supported initiatives like the No Tax on Overtime and the Back the Blue Act. And so in doing that, how do you think those measures are helping police officers, particularly in places like Broken Arrow?
Well, I hope it helps police officers everywhere, Broken Arrow included, obviously. But number one thing I want to make sure is people understand you're supported. That is the number one thing I hear from law enforcement is, hey, we're having a tough time recruiting because of what people are saying about us in the public, especially elected officials and what's actually being said. And so I try to be able to lead out and say, hey, there are lots of elected officials, myself included, that are very supportive of law enforcement, back every way that we can. Want to tell you thank you for the work you're doing. Understand it's dangerous every single day in every single spot that you're in. And so for me, finding practical ways to do this, like the Back the Blue Act, say, hey, it's going to be a hate crime if you actually attack law enforcement. Let's just call it what it is. Or to be able to deal with the no tax on overtime, which really affects law enforcement in a significant way, because quite frankly, you guys pull a lot of overtime to say, okay, let's help you on your federal tax bill to be able to have a practical way to say thank you as well.
Right, and you mentioned the staffing issues, and we're fortunate not to necessarily have as many of those staffing issues, but now with all of the special events and just the fact that there are always going to be limited funding.
Sure.
And so as communities grow and the need for policing and the recruitment aspects that many are experiencing, not just in Oklahoma, but across the country, that overtime is not something that they're doing to pad their bank account. It's something that's absolutely required because we're still going to have 24/7 coverage.
Yep. Yep, it is. It's a big deal. It's not only overtime on what I'd affectionately call the day job, but most law enforcement as well. They're work security for weddings or work security for special events that are around town, or for churches that hire them to be able to come in and do security. So there's additional stuff that's happening in their life as well, where they're picking up extra income. So they're doing overtime on their regular job. They're picking up extra income where they can, because the community is always pulling and saying, "Can you? Can you? Can you? Can you?" And when you have a heart for service, you're like, "Yep, I'm going to come help you." And there's just a lot of time, and hopefully we can find practical ways to be able to say thank you for being there.
Senator, in your book, Turn It Around, America's Revival, you write about the divisions in our country, the importance of healing and unity. In your view, what are some of the practical ways that communities like Broken Arrow and others can come together to make a positive difference?
Yeah, the turnaround book actually took me 3 years to write. It was a lot of time on the airplane and on weekends, and for me just to be able to get some heart issues out. I just had so many people that caught me on different issues, but it really boiled down most of the time to somebody fix the problems. And I would just smile at people and say, "Hey, this is not America to say we elect people and that elected person goes to fix the problems." We're still we the people. We've got to be able to engage in our community in practical ways. When we see a struggle in education in our community and in our state, we don't just say elect somebody different and they'll fix everything. We go, okay, what can I do to be able to help my school? How can I be able to walk alongside a teacher or superintendent? How can I be able to help them in practical ways? That makes a big difference. But for me, it's pushing us to be able to go back again to the most basic elements of really who we are as individuals and as a country. And that is, we serve each other, and we're at our best when we're actually taking care of each other. If we lose track of that, we start getting a heart for taking rather than giving, everything shifts in America. So we've got to be able to continue to return to this same basic attitude of, what am I doing to serve my neighbor? How am I helping the people around me? How am I actually serving my community? That I'm not going to be a person that's going to be focused on what's in it for me, but I'm going to be a person that's focused on what can I do to help others.
Right. And as you mentioned, in addition to that, as you kind of stated, that, well, it's someone else's job to do that, right? We elect these officials to take care of that stuff. In that same kind of vein, you've encouraged people to step up and make that difference in their own backyard. And so when we talk about those local leaders, as you just mentioned, that have this desire, what are ways that they can positively impact their community?
Yeah, I tell some very practical stories, some from Oklahoma, some from American history, some from biblical history. Quite frankly, I come from a Christian biblical worldview for me personally, and so I tell some scripture stories in it as well and say, here are things that have happened to make a difference. One of them I tell is the story of the Chuck Wagon Diner in Sperry, actually, and talk about sitting around a big oval table they called the round table, and it was a bunch of retired guys that were just sitting around and they just get a chance to visit. But this group was different, because they wouldn't just sit around and gripe about what was happening. They would quietly say, okay, this is a problem in our community. What are we going to do about it? And those 8 or 10 guys sitting around the table would quietly scheme which one of them is going to go work on repairing this, which one's going to go work on fixing this, or how they're going to get money together to be able to pay for whatever that may be they see. And it was just this really unique, practical example of a bunch of retired guys making fun of each other and just constant teasing, but then also quietly finding ways to be able to serve. There's a big difference between sitting around the table and griping with your neighbors and sitting around the table and saying, oh, what are we going to do about it? And I think the best examples are where we find those practical examples. So how do you volunteer to school? I don't know a teacher that wouldn't love to have a small business adopt that classroom and say, we're going to help buy school supplies. We're going to be there to help read once a week to some kids that are behind in reading. We're going to be there to be able to tutor a couple kids, because he or she's got 20 or 25 students, and they'd love to have somebody come in once a week to be able to help a couple kids that are behind on it. They just don't have anybody to be able to pull on for that. So that's a huge asset for them to be able to have. So practical ways that we can step in and stop complaining about the problems and actually engage in the problems is what makes a difference. As I try to remind people, no one hears you when you're yelling at the TV. Okay, no one hears you. If you're going to fix the problem, don't just yell at the TV. Actually find a practical thing to be able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I loved that story in the book. And it also is a little bit telling, too, because I can imagine that not everyone around that table in the diner in Sperry had the same ideology or agreed on every principle, right? What they agreed on is that if there's a problem, then they need to be a part of the solution.
Yeah, they did all agree that the cell phone was the worst invention ever, which they made me laugh at that, because they said they used to sit around the table and complain about things and argue about some fact or some statistic, and then somebody would just look it up on their smartphone and solve it. It's like, that's the worst invention. They said it ruined all of our best arguments.
Yeah, no doubt. The other thing, someone asked me recently if there was one thing that we could change that would help with some of that division and build more unity. And the first thing that comes to mind is just get rid of social media, right?
Gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
People believe still everything on social media, and it's just amazing to me. I was in a conversation with a meteorologist. I'll leave out which one it was yesterday. And I said, well, how are you handling the number of people that are saying the government's controlling the weather because they saw it on social media, all these secret conspiracy theories of the government controlling the weather? And he's like, it is just inundating us constantly. I was like, I'm getting it all the time. I keep telling people, if government was controlling the weather, we'd be San Diego every day, okay? We'd figure out a way to be able to do that. But it's just irrational. But because you see it on social media, it must be true. And it's just not. But it is our own challenge of our day is try to be able to figure out how to separate fact from fiction. Again, I was at a school yesterday after now the new law is passed where you can't have a cell phone on campus. The principal there when I was at the high school said, can you look around? Everybody's got their head up. They're talking to each other. It's a whole different atmosphere because now people aren't on their phones all day at school. And said it's been a huge asset to the campus to not have that ongoing fight happening all the time on class. So, yeah, well, we actually need to look at each other as people again.
Right, absolutely. I love that. You've also written about the importance of that civility and caring for your neighbor. Sure. You spoke to that today. As public safety officials and elected officials working together, how do we continue to make that positive impact in the community?
Yeah, there's just no substitute for getting to know each other. The old adage is the worst time to make a friend is when you need a friend. Getting to know people early on, what you see with school resource officers, what you see with people walking the neighborhood in a community and all kinds of community events when law enforcement are engaging with people in the community and they get to know each other as people. Because then when critical moments happen, you've got to know who you trust on that and that, hey, this is a person like me. They care about me. They care about our society. They're trying to be able to help. People make mistakes. That's just given. We're human beings. We make mistakes on every level on that. But when you get to know each other as people, you give each other a little more grace when that mistake happens or when a critical incident happens and there's like 30 different issues that come up on it to go, okay, let's sit down and work this out. So I'm a big believer in finding as many opportunities as you can to be able to sit down with people you may agree or disagree with and to be able to at least establish a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. The importance of transparent and open dialogue,
Yeah.
And especially without being in fear that a disagreement on an ideology means that we can't find that common ground on anything else. So that's fantastic. On that same line, we're talking about this idea of what can people do. And when you talk about especially, and you gave the story, I love the story about the difference we're seeing in our schools just even after a very short period of time.
Yep.
But for those young people that, it's easy generationally for every generation to say that the next or the next couple of generations just aren't the same. But I know that you've seen these impactful and powerful stories of what the difference young people are making in their communities. How do those young people get more engaged in their community to make that positive impact?
Yeah, it's again finding practical ways they can actually engage. I was with a group of students 2 weeks ago, and in the conversation I said to them, hey, what's happening with social media is all about the algorithm. The more you hate, the more snarky you are, the more bitter you are, the more likes you get. And so the more it actually replicates, the more you get of that, because that's the algorithm that's set there. The social media companies, Meta and everybody else, they're feeding what they think you want. If you want less of that, it'll go away. And so that's the difference here, that really a lot of young people have got to make a decision. Do I want the same things that the previous generation wanted on social media, more hatred, more anger, more division, or do I want something different? If you want something different, then don't like, quote unquote, what was actually sitting out there and actually start changing the algorithms, because the social media companies don't want more hatred. They just want more eyeballs. They don't care what it is. And so we're really choosing what direction that social media is going to go based on what we actually watch, what we listen to, what we actually click on and like. So let's help change the direction of that in the days ahead. And in practical ways, man, there's so many students and so many student groups that they're finding ways to be able to serve people, ways they can actually volunteer at their church, or they can volunteer at nonprofits, or they can get a chance to get engaged with their student council in other ways at school, or the things their football team or baseball team can do in practical ways. Those things start setting a life pattern to say that this is what I did in high school. And I think most people don't know really who you are as an adult is often who you were in high school and college. And I joke with people about it. Most people don't believe me. And then I'll say to somebody that's in their 50s or 60s, I'll say, tell me what your music is. When I just say your music, what's your music? It's almost always what you listened to in high school and college. It really is a pattern of life that starts setting that path for you. And so I say to folks that are in high school and college, set the rhythm where you want to be able to be for the rest of your life. Because how you serve and what you do now will really affect the next decades of your life.
Right. That's such a powerful message. And that spirit of service that you're so big on, but it's absolutely vital and important that, we're asking, and I've experienced this with my own children, where when your children are getting ready to graduate high school, everybody wants to know what they're majoring in or all that. And to some degree, it almost seems like we spend more time worrying about what that degree plan is going to be or what that major is. We are not asking what's their purpose. What purpose are they trying to achieve in life? What is that higher calling? And so I love the message that you're talking about. If you could understand, bring it back to the policing a little bit, but if you could wish that more people would understand policing, what would you hope that people understand about policing in society today that maybe they don't know?
How fast things really move. I think that's the challenge. People will see body cam footage or they'll hear stories, but it's different when you're in real life and you're having to make a decision and you're having to be able to scan the location that you're in, figure out the threats that you're facing, and make a decision that is literally in half a second. People just don't realize how incredibly difficult that is for an entire day. You can load up and do that for 10 minutes and go, okay, now I'm on. But to go, wait a minute, do that for 10 hours and see what that is like. Literally every intersection that you're stopped at to be able to scan the horizon around you. Am I facing threats? Because you're in a vehicle that is signaling to the community, I'm here to protect and serve you. But you're also a target now in a community, that there are members that are out there and individuals out there that do mean to do you harm. And we just had a guy literally go set fire of a law enforcement officer's house in vehicles and just in anger and rage. And we'll get all the details on that. But there are different threats that are out there. Every person that you interact with in the public is a person that you don't know if it's a threat or not until you get a chance to interact with them. And what I think a lot of people don't know is so many people lie all day to law enforcement, just all day. Every time you actually pull somebody over to give them a warning and be able to talk, they just lie to you all day. And so it hardens your heart as law enforcement go, who can I trust? Because you just hear people lie to you all day long. And that just builds some cynicism. And so you have to say to members of law enforcement, okay, I get it. You live in a very difficult role where people lie to you all day long on all kinds of different things. You have to be on high alert all the time. It's hard to be able to pull off of that. And that in any critical situation, while either you're sitting at church or in a grocery store, you still have to be on alert because that's just who you are at that point. And I think most people don't realize that. They think you just take the uniform on and off. You just put the pistol on or off, and but you can't. You can't just turn that off.
Yeah. And it's so true. One of the things that I think and I can tell you for me personally as a leader in policing, is so vital that back to that purpose idea, that all those things you mentioned are factual, and it is a fact of our normal everyday life. That's what is our normal level.
Right.
What we can't lose sight of is why we got into this profession, why we remain in this profession, and it is to serve others. And so, you've heard, I'm sure, discussions in the past about that guardian versus warrior mentality and things. And when people ask me, I say I need both. Right? I need people that can make those split-second decisions to protect a citizen or someone, just a passerby or bystander. But I also need people that can understand the challenges and have compassion with people that are experiencing maybe the worst moment in their life, or they're going through a really difficult time, and what they're saying to you and how they're reacting to you is just maybe because of the uniform you wear and not to you personally. And it's part of our role to try to disrupt that in a way that we're creating this positive impact on people, even if they don't appreciate at the moment that we're there. Through that dialogue and discourse and through that building of trust and that relationship that you've mentioned, that we can actually get through to them, and they can see what our purpose really is, and that truly is to serve others. And policing has evolved so much beyond. I've gotten away from, and I've challenged our people to not really call what we do law enforcement. Law enforcement is a part of what we do, but really, when you look at policing, it runs the gamut of what our citizens demand and what we provide to our community. Now, that probably the least of what we do on a day-to-day basis is actually enforce the law, but it's neighborhood disputes, in the home disputes. It's counseling troubled teenagers. You name it. It's finding services for a senior citizen that is struggling to make ends meet, and it's finding those resources for them. And so there's so much more that we've become. And so I do appreciate exactly what you're saying with that.
I think most people don't realize how often you're interacting face to face with people in a mental health crisis or with just mental health issues long term.
Right.
And I think people just don't realize that. But that's just for members of the law enforcement and police officers, all day long you're interacting with people that are having crisis moments. Like it's their worst moment. Some of them they've had in years. You have the opportunity to be able to be there to try to figure out how do we talk you down from this? How do we actually interact? How do we actually get you back to a better place? But for also those that have just mental health issues that literally their family is at wit's end to say, I don't know how to deal with this anymore. They call you.
Yeah.
and that's a tough one as well to be able to deal with. How do I help you get into a safe place and to be able to not only help you, help your family, help the whole community?
Right. And I think I've been really impressed to see how our profession has accepted those challenges and continue to evolve as a profession, because like everything, there were a time, especially as your dad served, where the profession was very different. You mentioned some of the struggles and challenges that involve that, and now this really eye towards this holistic wellness, but also just in how we do show up to serve our community every day in all of those different facets. And I think that's what I'm probably most proud of over nearly 3 decades in this career, is watching that evolution of what it was like when I started. And you mentioned those dangers, and even going through field training and having to meet a senior citizen in their home and stand in the interview stance and very guarded, and I'm there to take a report from her for something that's happened. Somebody stole something off the porch or whatever, to now understanding that we can still be approachable. And while we still do have that mental acuity of that guard up and all those kinds of things, we don't have to have that same appearance to us, that we've evolved to be more of that approachable side, more of that community engagement where people do understand those things about us. So I really do appreciate that. So back to turnaround, you mentioned that, but what really, and you've gotten into a little bit about what inspired you about that, but what inspired you, and what do you hope readers from all different facets, what do they take away from that book?
Yeah, the hope I have for Turnaround is that everybody picks it up and has a new idea about how they can personally be a leader. It is a leadership training book in some ways for people that don't consider themselves leaders. Way too many folks will say leaders are people that have titles. They're the chief. Okay, they're the senator. They have the manager. They have the title, and so that's a leader. And I just smile and go, leadership is most simple method to look at it is a leader sees a problem, asks somebody to help solve that, and then the 2 or 3 or 4 of them go work on it. That's it. Leaders see a problem. A lot of people walk past problems and go, stinks to be them, and they walk away. Leaders in their core look at a problem and go, somebody needs to do something about it. I should start. And they actually start working on whatever that problem is at your school, in your family, in your church, in your community, and your workplace, whatever it may be. Leaders rise up and see a problem and actually start doing something about it. And so I'm trying to help people get a perspective of how can you be a leader where you are to be able to make a difference in your community. And the other side of this is I really am challenging people within the state, within our nation, to say, if we're going to solve the hardest problems of our nation, and we have a lot of hard ones, big debt, all the challenges that we have, if we're going to solve the hardest problems, it's not because we're angry. When we're angry, we should do something about it, not just get angrier. And for some reason, culturally right now and on social media and in conversations around coffee tables, it is all about, are you as angry as I am? And everybody's like, yes, I'm as angry as you are. And let me talk to you about why I'm angry. And I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. When you're angry, let's do something about it. Let's try to figure out how to solve things in a productive way, not to just be angrier today than we were yesterday, because that actually doesn't help you, doesn't help your family, doesn't help the community. What helps us is when we actually see something and do something about it. As I mentioned, I tell a lot of biblical stories. I'm obsessed with the story of Nehemiah because I think it's such a good leadership story. It's a thousands of years old story about a time when Israel had been destroyed. They'd been attacked by the Babylonians. All the leadership had been drug off into captivity. They were there for a century in captivity, so a new generation had risen up. And there's a guy named Nehemiah. His brother Hanani had gone to Jerusalem, which had been destroyed decades before. And Nehemiah just says to his brother, "What's it like?" And Hanani basically says, "Oh, it's awful. The gates have been burned down. The walls are down. All the people live in disgrace." And Hanani just walks off like, "Yeah, it stinks to be them." Well, Nehemiah drops to his knees and prays, it says, for some days, and just asks God, "What do I do about this?" That's the difference. Some people see a problem and say, "Stinks to be them," and walk away. And some people go, "God, what's my part in fixing this and making it better?" And if there's anything I can do and turn around, it's encouraging more people to ask God, where's the problem that you want me to work on? There's 1,000 problems around me. Which one's mine that I need to work on?
Yeah, and that's so powerful. I love that. And you mentioned the idea of grace before, and I would add to that, and I see semblances of this in your book, is that you just in the story you just told, it didn't take a day for Jerusalem to become the way it was,
right.
And you're not going to turn it around in a day.
You're not,
right? So it's those incremental efforts, but it's got to be purposeful and intentional. But that's the message I preach a lot as a leader is that, when we are faced with some of these challenges, by the time they got to our attention, they've been in the works for a while.
Right.
So we're not going to just pass a new policy or wave our magic wand and fix it that day, but it's going to take that effort. And really it's going to take that team effort, because not one single person brings all of the solution to the challenges that we face today in society. And so it does take that team effort of different ideology, different backgrounds, that diversification, if you will, of people that just have different lived experiences.
Yep, we're still we the people. That's still us.
Absolutely. Yeah. So powerful. So back to you. Any final thoughts that I didn't ask you today, or anything that you want to just add for our listeners?
I would just say continue to be able to pray for the nation, find practical ways to be able to encourage people. There is just no substitute for looking somebody in the face. It's somebody that does policing. I'm stumbling on. I want to say law enforcement.
That's
okay.
I'm
saying that now. But for somebody to be able to have practical ways to be able to say thank you, I just don't hesitate to be able to buy somebody lunch, or to be able to just say thank you, or just be able to walk by and look people in the eye and say, "I really appreciate what you do," because you're rebuilding trust. But it's also establishing a relationship that's different.
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer in engaging with people that are serving, thanking people that are actually serving. So I appreciate what you do, and for the whole team that's around you here in Broken Arrow, and quite frankly around the state. There's a pretty remarkable group of people that literally give their spouse a hug when they leave, and when they look them in the eye and stay safe out there, they mean it, because it's a really different kind of role on that. So just really appreciate the folks that are willing to be able to lay their lives out there every day to be able to serve the community.
Well, I can absolutely tell you that we appreciate the support, and I have always had the support from you and your team, and continue to see that. Taking the time out of your schedule is absolutely crazy.
Oh, it's nuts.
And so your team has worked on getting you here today, and that's just a testament to what it means to you to get back out in the community and to be able to spend time with us today. And I can't thank you enough for that. You mentioned a lot of really powerful concepts that I hope our readers really tune into, and even go back and just listen to some of the things that you're talking about. Yeah. It sounds so simplistic when we talk about it,
right?
But it just takes that initial step. It takes that desire to be intentional and purposeful in taking that step. And as you mentioned, we don't have to solve all the problems, right? We just find the one that speaks to you, and focus on that one. And as we kind of make our way through that, then have a chance to kind of branch out from there. And before you know it, we've really made a true impact in our communities. Yeah, absolutely. So, Senator Lankford, thank you again for your time and continued support of policing across Oklahoma. Your insights today have reminded us of the importance of service, community, and leadership, and we just appreciate you so much.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate being here, and it's really great that you're doing this and trying to be able to have that ongoing conversation with the community as well.
Thank you. And to our listeners out there, until next time, we'll see you It's always a great day in BA.